Did you see that thing that the FDA put out?
What did the FDA put out?
It was a tweet, and it was snarky. I admit it. They said, "You are not a horse, you are not a cow, stop taking this stuff," or something.
You're probably the only one at CNN that's glad.
We're not.
The rest of them are all lying about me taking horse medication. And we should talk about that.
That bothers you.
It should bother you, too. They're lying at your network.
Calling it a horse dewormer is not a flattering thing, I get that.
It's a lie. It's a lie on a news network, and it's a lie that's that's a lie that they're conscious of. This is not a mistake.
Yeah.
They're unfavorably framing it as veterinary medicine.
Oh, you're going to want to sit down for this one? Because when Joe Rogan smells woke nonsense, he doesn't just push back, he obliterates. This isn't your average podcast chit-chat. This is where idealism crashes into hard truth and only one side walks away intact. Rogan's not out here sipping soy lattes and whispering safe space slogans. He's torching the hypocrisy, the contradictions, and the performative outrage that woke culture keeps trying to sell. And when a guest dares to step into that minefield, let's just say Joe doesn't flinch. He leans in. We're digging into the moments that left audiences gasping, guests scrambling, and Rogan doing what he does best, dropping unfiltered reality like a hammer. So brace yourself. This isn't just a conversation, it's a verbal demolition.
But my point is, you're working for a news organization. If they're lying about a comedian taking horse medication, what are they telling us about Russia? What are they telling us about Syria? Do you understand that that's why people get concerned about the veracity of the news?
Let's rewind to 2021, because what went down on Joe Rogan's podcast that year was nothing short of a media bloodbath. CNN's own Dr. Sanjay Gupta, yes, the face of their pandemic coverage, made a rare, gutsy move by stepping into the lion's den. Now picture this, a polished network figure sitting across from Joe Rogan, who at that point had just weathered a media firestorm for announcing he'd beaten illness with a treatment plan that included, you guessed it, ivermectin. That's when the mainstream media lost its collective mind.
The fact is that despite the relentless fake news and media hysteria, Donald Trump is the most popular president with Republican voters ever. And that includes the great Ronald Reagan after he survived an assassination attempt. Grab some popcorn and enjoy this lefty rage bait, also known as facts.
So this isn't just Republicans who like Donald Trump. This is Republicans who love Donald Trump, and he's up like a rocket. Look at this. In July 2017, the strongly approved was 53%. That's pretty good. But look at where he is now. 63% of Republicans strongly approve of the job that Donald Trump is doing about 5 months into his presidency. Republicans love Donald Trump the way that Americans love Disney World.
CNN didn't just disagree, they went nuclear. Story after story painted Joe as some conspiracy-chugging madman peddling horse paste. The tone, smug, the facts, twisted, the narrative. Joe Rogan was a danger to public health. And right then, Rogan knew what he had to do. So when Gupta showed up, Joe wasn't just welcoming a guest. He was preparing for a reckoning. And, oh, he delivered. With cameras rolling and millions watching, Joe ripped through the media spin like a buzzsaw. Did you see what the FDA tweeted? He asked, almost casually, then hit him with the quote, "You are not a horse. You are not a cow. Stop taking this stuff." Joe didn't let that fly for a second. Why the snark? Why the propaganda? He pressed. Why mock a drug that's been administered billions of times to human beings? Why pretend I was eating barn scraps when my doctor prescribed an FDA-approved medication? Rogan wasn't just asking questions. He was surgically dismantling a media narrative. He pulled out the pill pack on camera. This is ivermectin. Human ivermectin. I can afford people medicine, mother. This is insane. And Gupta? Cornered, flustered, caught in the headlights of actual accountability. Rogan wasn't done. He drove it home. You know they were lying. You work for the network. Isn't that dangerous? Boom. That exchange wasn't just a moment. It was a turning point. A podcast host, armed with receipts and reason, exposed how a trusted network twisted facts for a headline and got caught doing it live. CNN tried to frame a false narrative. Joe Rogan set it on fire. And the best part? He didn't need theatrics, just truth, delivered with surgical precision. Because when propaganda walks into Rogan's house, it doesn't walk out the same. Then came the shift, the moment everything cracked wide open. The debate wasn't about ivermectin anymore. It wasn't even about that. It became something way bigger, way darker. Why would a major news network knowingly lie? And Joe, he smelled blood. He didn't flinch, he didn't stutter, he pushed again and again, calm as a storm cloud before the lightning. Until finally, Sanjay broke. Caught between Rogan's relentless pressure and the receipts on screen, Sanjay Gupta finally muttered the words CNN never wanted to hear. Boom. The silence in that moment, deafening. And Joe didn't let him off the hook. Joe wouldn't let him change the subject, wouldn't let the truth slip away. Not this time. He had CNN's top medical figure dead to rights, and he didn't stop there. If they're willing to lie about a comedian taking medicine, what are they telling us about Russia? About Syria? About everything else? It was surgical, devastating, honest, a live, televised dissection of media trust by the guy mainstream outlets love to mock. But here's where it got truly ridiculous. After the episode aired, CNN tried to spin the spin. They aired a segment interviewing Sanjay about his podcast appearance, clipped a few safe moments, and, of course, left out the moment. The one where Joe exposed the network's blatant dishonesty. That part, buried. Instead, CNN leaned back into the smugness. Sanjay, back in friendly territory, called Joe's arguments mental gymnastics, a classic media maneuver: deny the damage, pretend it didn't happen, then smear your opponent from a distance. But it was too late. CNN's credibility sinking, Joe Rogan's podcast surging, the people chose, and they didn't choose corporate spin. And just when you thought Joe couldn't get any more explosive, enter Graham Hancock versus Flint Dibble. Now this one wasn't just intense, it was academic warfare on a global stage. Graham Hancock, the rebel researcher, the guy the establishment loves to mock, sat across from Flint Dibble, an archaeologist backed by the full weight of institutional orthodoxy. And the gloves came off immediately. Flint and his peers had been furious ever since Hancock's Netflix docuseries dropped. Why? Because Hancock had the audacity to say that maybe, just maybe, humans had help from a lost Ice Age civilization. Not aliens, not fantasy, just ancient humans we haven't fully understood yet. For archaeologists, that wasn't just wrong, it was blasphemy. The Society for American Archaeology, with its 5,000 members, accused Hancock of promoting narratives they claimed were racist, chauvinistic, and anti-Semitic. Let that sink in. Disagree with our timeline? We'll label you a bigot. Hancock was stunned. You apply those labels to someone and you're trying to destroy them, he said. You're trying to get them hated. Flint tried to backpedal. I didn't write that, but Joe cut through the noise again. Your co-author did. Your community did, and you stood by it. What did they want? They urged Netflix to slap disclaimers on Hancock's show. They demanded it be labeled science fiction. Translation, cancel him. But Hancock wasn't going quietly, and Joe wasn't about to let the mob silence the guy with questions. This wasn't just a debate over ancient ruins. It was a high-stakes showdown over who gets to control the narrative, the credentialed gatekeepers, or the independent voices daring to ask, what if? As the clash unfolded, millions watched it live. People didn't just see a theory being attacked, they saw an idea being put on trial. And it was all happening in Joe Rogan's house, where spin dies and unfiltered conversation rules. The establishment tried to bury Joe, tried to cancel Hancock, tried to hold the gate, but it didn't work, because the more they shouted, the more people tuned in. And this was only the beginning. They didn't just criticize him. They torched him, labeled him every nasty thing they could cook up in the academic kitchen. Misogynist, racist, anti-science, dangerous. You name it, they threw it. And did they ever offer an apology for slandering a man simply because his theories didn't match their textbooks? Of course not. They circled the wagons and doubled down. It was a meltdown masquerading as righteous outrage, the kind of freakout that makes you wonder, what would happen if Eddie Bravo ever got a Netflix deal? The Smithsonian would probably burst into flames. That wasn't a counter-argument. That was a tantrum wrapped in self-pity. Graham calmly kept pressing. Joe held steady. But Flint? He spun out like a car on bald tires. When asked why he co-authored a letter demanding Netflix reclassify Ancient Apocalypse as fantasy, Flint and his academic peers had actually lobbied the media, claiming Hancock's show was the most dangerous show on Netflix. This wasn't about historical accuracy, this was about control. The gatekeepers of archaeology couldn't handle someone popular and uncredentialed getting airtime with alternative ideas. And instead of arguing with logic, Flint threw insults. Instead of refuting theories, he demanded censorship. Then, just to top it off, he got visibly agitated when Hancock brought up other historical thinkers, mocked in their time, who were eventually proven right. The tension shot through the roof. Flint was red-faced, arms crossed, rattling off rebuttals like a guy trying to plug a dam with duct tape. It wasn't a debate, it was an unmasking. And through it all, Joe just sat back and let the chaos breathe. No favoritism, no cheap shots, just real, unfiltered talk. That's what makes Joe Rogan different. He doesn't care if you're mainstream or fringe, expert or outcast. If you sit at his table, you'd better come prepared. Because no one gets a free pass. That episode didn't end with a mic drop. There was no obvious winner. But what it did give us was far more powerful: clarity. It exposed the cracks in academic elitism, the fear of open dialogue, and the desperation of a system losing its grip on the narrative. And now, it's your turn. What did you think of the clash? Was Hancock onto something? Or did Flint have a point buried under the panic? Let's light up that comment section. And if this breakdown hit the spot, share it with someone who's tired of the same old scripted media drama. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, where the truth doesn't ask for permission.